Good evening, hello and welcome. You're watching Viewpoint. I'm Anusha Soni. The latest attack on the Indian Consulate in San Francisco has yet again highlighted the evil designs of Khalistani terror networks. This was not the first time. Earlier, violent protests by Khalistani extremist groups were witnessed outside the Indian High Commission in March 2023. Before that, UK-based Khalistani protested outside the Indian High Commission 2018-2022. We've seen these instances, openly raising anti-India slogans. Organization and terror groups like Seek for Justice, a Khalistani separatist outfit, they organized referendums in 2020, widely circulating their propaganda. There have been several attempts on attacks on temples in Australia as well, and much more. The list is indeed a long one. Now, the spot in the pro-Khalistani activities on foreign soil has clearly earned the Indian strategic quarters, rightly so. These are groups that have propagated violence, hatred and secessionism against India. The Indian authorities have taken up these issues with the respective countries. However, many experts argue that West continues to play soft war with these issues. The kid glove treatment meted out to Khalistani or any other anti-India lobby is one of the key stumbling blocks in strengthening ties with these nations. Should India take up these issues far more strongly with the Western partners? Should there be a zero-tolerance policy to such anti-India activities? Shouldn't these issues be made imperative for deepening ties with India for any Western power? Our focus on Viewpoint tonight.
पार्टनर देश जो है, जैसे कनाडा है, अमेरिका है, यूके है, ऑस्ट्रेलिया है, जहां कभी कभी खालिस्तानी एक्टिविटीज़ होती हैं, हमने उनको रिक्वेस्ट की है कि वो उनको खालिस्तानियों को स्पेस न दें। रेडिकल एक्सट्रीमिस्ट विचारधारा जो है वो ना हमारे लिए अच्छा है, ना उनके लिए है, ना हमारे रिश्तों के लिए।
Well, let's take all the questions that I raised here earlier to the expert joining us on the broadcast. We have with us Charlotte Littlewood. She's somebody who's a journalist, researcher, has written extensively about these issues. Charlotte, thank you so much for speaking with us. Thank you for joining us on the broadcast. My question to you is about the recent attacks, especially led by Khalistani groups. And we've seen these kind of attacks happening in different countries, in UK, Canada, and the latest one in San Francisco. As a researcher, what's your understanding? How are these groups able to carry out such dastardly attacks?
So I think this is really, really concerning for us here in the UK. And the pro-Khalistan separatist movement is very poorly understood. And government officials, even those that are tasked with working in counter-terrorism, have a really poor understanding of Khalistan extremism. So when I worked recently around the attack on the High Commission here in the UK, and then the subsequent attack on a Sikh family who didn't believe in the need for a Khalistan state, that my experience was that those that are working in counter-terrorism here in the UK, the prevent officials, had a distinct lack of understanding of Khalistan extremism in its entirety. I was met with such ignorance that one prevent official said to me, this is more of an India problem and not something that we're going to be concerned about here in the UK. I do think that is beginning to change. Now we are seeing these replica attacks like we've seen in San Francisco. That is now a changing sort of mood around Khalistan extremism. And there is more discussion amongst counterterrorism officials here in the UK. And they are turning to look at renewed training and renewed understanding of this specific space.
So when you say that there's a lack of understanding, is it about downplaying the severity of the problem? And is that something which they're doing consciously? Would it be correct to say that the authorities have not acted proportionately and the response from the Western nation not to be more stringent when it comes to issues like these?
I think the understanding of the severity of this issue is lacking, but I still find that very surprising. When we look at the terrorist attack in Canada, and that's the largest terrorist attack that's ever happened in Canada, was perpetrated by Khalistani extremists. So it's not without there being plenty of information out there on this kind of extremism and the dangers of it. I think it is the fact that we have become bogged down in counterterrorism around issues that sort of coming from Salafist jihadist ideologies. So ISIS, Al-Qaeda, this form of terrorism is what has consumed counterterrorism here in the UK for so many years. And now looking at extremism that's coming from the subcontinent, and looking at even what we've seen in the UK with acts against Hindu community, and now what we're seeing with this extreme Khalistani movement, it is just something that experts in the field have not readied themselves for, and have spent so much time looking at Salafist jihadist ideology that now looking at what is coming from the subcontinent is something unfamiliar with a distinct lack of expertise.
Distinct lack of expertise. Going forward, what is it that these countries can do? Let's talk about, say, UK, America, Canada. What can the governments in these countries do more? Is it about acting more stringently? Is it about taking these issues far more seriously than they have in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think it's ignorance. We've also seen an element of infiltration as well. We have a pro-Khalistan separatist infiltration into Parliament via APPGs, our all parliamentary groups. So there is an issue in which this ideology is actually managing to have influence at high level, and then that's met with an ignorance from those working in counterterrorism and policing, which therefore makes it very difficult to counter. But I do think we're seeing a change. We're seeing a shift in the mood from especially the prevent teams about understanding Khalistan extremism. We recently had a report launched in the UK, the Colin Bloom Faith Report, which had a large section afforded to Khalistan extremism. And there is just a beginning of an energy to research, understand and counter this particular form of extremism. So I do think we're seeing a shift, but it's taken a long time and it has been too slow to move from our emphasis on Salafist jihadist ideologies and that threat to now this diasporic threat. And I think piquing the interest of the media has been the moving in of hate preachers from Bangladesh and Pakistan. We recently had a hate preacher come in from Bangladesh that's called for the death of blasphemers and the death of Ahmadis, and been very anti-Semitic. And these issues that are coming from the subcontinent, these issues around extremism that are unfamiliar to our counterterrorism professionals, are all sort of being looked at now in greater detail. And that does include Khalistan extremism.
Charlotte Littlewood, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us on the broadcast and sharing your expertise on this important issue. Well, we also have with us on the broadcast our other guest, Mr. Sushant Sareen, who's a senior fellow at the ORF. Arif Ajakia, who's a human rights activist, is also joining us on the broadcast. Mr. Manjinder Singh Sirsa, the spokesperson of the BJP, is also with us on the show. Mr. Sareen, I'd like you to open this discussion for us. I have a list in front of me, and this is a timeline of key disturbances outside the Indian High Commission, temple attacks that have happened ever since 2020 in the last 2 to 3 years. It's a very long list. India has taken up this issue at multiple levels on different occasions with different kinds of severity and different kind of assertion depending on the kind of incident. But do you think that there is a problem in our response, or there's a problem in the way West perceives these anti-India elements on their soil? Mr. Sareen.
Anusha, I think the problem is more from the Western side and a denial from the Western side. You know, when you recount all these incidents which have been happening over the last 3 or 4 years, you'll notice one thing. The intensity of these actions has only been increasing. And all that we are getting from the West is either sheer callousness, no response, or pro forma condemnations like the kind which the Canadian foreign minister has done today, or a couple of other people have done, or even for that matter, the US State Department spokesperson. I'm not interested in their condemnation. I'm interested in their action. Because if you look at how it starts with graffiti, then it starts with desecration of temples, then it goes on to assault on people who are opposed to these Khalistani scum. Then it escalates to attacking of the Indian missions. Now it is about arson around the Indian mission, actually burning it down. They've already attacked it in the past, not only in Australia, in England, but also in the US. Now they have firebombed it. And now they are openly and brazenly and shamelessly threatening the security of Indian diplomats and publishing posters calling for their killing.
Yeah.
Now, clearly, somewhere somebody has to put their foot down. Because if you look at the past record of these Khalistani scum, what have they done? They've bombed an airline, killed, they've been mass murderers, not just in Punjab. They've been mass murderers outside India. So, clearly, for the Western countries to play this like it's some kind of softball is just not on. It's not acceptable. It should not be acceptable.
It should not be acceptable at all. And you rightly said that we don't want the condemnation. We want something beyond it, which is the actions that should be taken. Mr. Arif Ajakia, coming to you, taking in a view from you. There are various groups living in different parts of the Western world, especially in UK, Canada and US, that raise the bugle of human rights, that claim a certain sense of victimhood when they're abroad. And they also try and target the Indian state. A lot of elements from these groups are seen to be sidelining with these radical elements, say in the Khalistani, the pro-Khalistani movement of sort that we have seen, especially in the three countries that I mentioned. Do you think that the plaque of human rights is being misused by a lot of these organizations?
Well, basically, I think the problem is that Western governments like Australia, UK, Canada, and now America, there are persistent attacks on mandirs and gurdwaras and Indian consulates and embassy. Here in London, Indian embassy was attacked, Indian High Commission. I think there is a lack of action by governments. These groups, the Khalistani groups who are involved in these kind of activities, they should be declared banned. And they should be declared terrorist group, because this is not human rights issue. This is terrorism. And the modus operandi shows us that who are the masters of terrorists, because these terrorists are trained and organized by Pakistan. Pakistan's Prime Minister today in the meeting of SCO said that India is using terrorism for lobbying. But what Pakistan is doing, Pakistan is using terrorism as a foreign policy.
As a statecraft.
So Khalistani groups are organized by Pakistan, and their modus operandi is of a terrorist group. So these governments should declare Khalistani groups as a terrorist. You cannot attack a consulate or embassy of a country.
The reason I raked up the word called human rights, not that we should be frowning upon it in any way, is because a lot of these terror groups use human rights as some kind of subterfuge to survive in these Western countries, seemingly, claiming in some kind of victimhood or some kind of suffering that they are going through, and then use this plaque for some kind of verification or validation that they want from the respective governments. Otherwise, the Western governments would have taken that action, and we wouldn't have to discuss this today. They would have been banned.
Well, I will tell you that human rights are used when there are human rights violations. Sikhs have no human rights violations in India. And Western governments are very much aware that there is no human rights violations of Sikh. Like last week in Pakistan, Sindh, Sakhar, Sikhs were celebrating Kirtan and Muslims attacked them. They did not allow them to celebrate Kirtan. While in India, on government level, the days of gurus of Sikh and the festivals of Sikh are celebrated on the government level. So there is no issue of human rights.
No, and on that note, I want to go to Mr. Sirsa as well. Mr. Sirsa, there is no resonance that these pro-Khalistani voices find here in India, whether in Punjab or in any other part of the country. Those tensions don't exist here domestically for them to harp on them. However, their propaganda has become very loud. Do you think that the government should do something more as far as these activities are concerned? I'm aware that at various instances that the government has taken this up very strongly, especially the attack that happened on the temples in Australia. But there has been a certain degree of tolerance vis-a-vis countries like UK, America, Canada, when it comes to the kind of political subterfuge that these terror organizations have got. Mr. Sirsa.
No, definitely they are soft, and especially if you talk about Canadian government, they are very much soft on these people. And now they are paying the price for being a soft. We have seen there are killings in Canada. There was a bomb blast in Canada. Another Sikh who was killed in a target killing. Another who was killed in a bomb blast. So it is not that the Canada will not have to pay for the price for all this. They will definitely have to pay it. But the thing is, what I am more concerned about two things. As Mr. Arif very well said, the Indian government, he has done his best when it comes to Sikhs. May it be a celebration of our Guru's Prakash Purab, Gurpurab, or maybe saving those people who are not Indian nationals, but are Sikhs and living in Afghanistan.
Yes.
You see the commitment of Indian government towards Sikhs. The commitment is, even if you are not the citizen of this country, but being your religion is based on this country, we are all there to save you. And the Prime Minister of India sends a special plane to take people, to carry people from Afghanistan, not just people, but also the pious Guru Granth sites. But at the same time, what I'm seeing is Canada or maybe in America, we are shameful. We feel sometimes that it is all done to tarnish our image throughout the world, because Sikhs are not ever seen as terrorists. They are seen as the people who stand by the people who are affected by terrorists or any other kind of people. They are never known for this kind of thing. But today what we feel is, and what we see is, that's a deep conspiracy, and especially by ISI. These people are paid by ISI. What I say unfortunate is that our border is close to Pakistan, and the Indian border to Pakistan is from Punjab, and they got all opportunities. They try to.
Well, sir, I want to focus this discussion. I mean, the Islamist networks and the Khalistani networks being correlated to each other. We had a researcher some time ago with us on the broadcast, and she was pointing out that there is a nexus which is emerging. So I believe it's well documented. I want to talk about the fact, what is it that we can do? Mr. Sareen, I'm coming back to you. The resonance that issues like the Khalistan movement that it has in the diaspora, especially living in countries like Canada, UK and America. There was in fact a research paper that I was reading on the ORF website, and it pointed out how most of these pro-Khalistani elements or members come from lower strata of the society with little education or economic means. And then they are used for the tools, they are used for the propaganda. And a vast majority of the diaspora community, which does not agree with this Khalistani propaganda, is actually silent because they are scared in various ways.
Anusha, number one, the term silent majority is often used for people who are in their graves. So when we keep talking about the silent majority, it means nothing.
Yes.
If the majority is not going to express itself against this fringe element, then that majority is dead and gone. It's finished. It doesn't matter. It doesn't count. Number one. Number two, you are right. Most of these guys and many of these fellows who go out there, of them elites, they are actually blackmailed into supporting these fellows, right? They're given a certain pay and they go and carry out this kind of activity out there. They form the crowds. They have nothing to lose anyways. They have nothing to do also. So there is definitely, and I think it's undeniable, there is an external angle. But let us also not forget that there are two sides to this picture. One is the external angle, which in some ways is becoming a very, it's becoming quite nasty. And then there is an internal angle where there is some kind of, how should I put it? I don't have the exact correct words, but there is a kind of a softness towards some of the terrorists of the past, Bhindranwale, for example.
Yes.
When the SGPC starts taking up Bhindranwale and plastering the posters of many of these terrorists who were killed when they defiled the Golden Temple, they defiled not only the Golden Temple, but they were responsible for the massacres of people in Punjab in those bad old days of the 80s and 90s. When their pictures are plastered as heroes of the community, and I don't think they can ever be called heroes of the community. Anybody who calls these people heroes of the community cannot be a true Sikh.
No, but Mr. Sareen, what you're trying to say is that there is a soft attitude towards the likes of Bhindranwale even here in India.
Absolutely.
And that is one of the key problems and issues that we need to address.
Anusha, that gives sanction to some of these activities which are carried out outside
I think
India.
Mr. Sirsa should also speak on this. Mr. Sirsa, I believe That's an important point that Mr. Sareen is raising. I agree that it's an uncomfortable
Very
point
important.
to talk about. But yes, there are elements, there are people
not at all.
who have this soft side towards the likes of Bhindranwale, who was responsible for a lot of violence and mayhem that we saw in Amritsar in Punjab, at the Golden Temple and different parts of the country. How is it that we can deal with that kind of sentiment?
Anusha, definitely, it's absolutely right with what has been said here, but I don't agree with one thing. See, if few people who are silent, I must tell you there are maybe in people just in shape of 100 people who are of this agenda, and who are most of them are paid by ISI. The diaspora living abroad, they are 7-Eleven working day and night, and they do not want to mess with them, I must say, because I'm known to most of the diaspora. I've been to many gurdwaras. What I've seen is that these few of those peoples who are radicals there, they do not let people speak their will. They do not let people put up their views.
Yeah, there is
and most
a real
of the people,
security
most
threat.
of them, I must say, the majority. See, the majority of, you have seen what happened to this, our diplomat there. They have put up a picture of a diplomat, of ambassador, and saying that they are responsible for killing. Anybody will ever believe that state of India will go to the Canada and to kill somebody? No, they will not. But definitely we are fighting against the terrorism. Terrorism is one thing which every religion, every person should fight against. But there are two different things. One, people want to stay silent for a reason. They do not want to mess with them. One thing. Secondly, these are very few number of people. I must say every Indian, you speak to any Sikh here in India, may it be in Punjab also, nobody wants to walk on this way because they have seen the innocent people who were killed and the politicians made out their life out of it. They made tons of money out of it. They made big chairs out of it.
There's one point I want to discuss. It was just mentioned by one of the panelists how Pakistan uses, and it has been said by the Prime Minister without naming Pakistan that there are various countries that use terror as a tool of foreign policy, as a part of statecraft. I want to put this question to both Mr. Sushant Sareen and Arif Ajakia. That is the West or the Western nations, are these Western nations using the tool of extremism or the plaque of so-called human rights to corner India, or to have some kind of a hedge against India, or to corner it on the global platform? Why is it that the Western countries are seen soft on these forms of extremism, especially when it comes to India and the issues that the Indian government has been raising? Mr. Ajakia, first to you, then I'll go to Mr. Sareen.
Well, I think it may be that the Western governments are using these groups in the shield of human rights. But there is no question about it that it is Pakistani organized group. I will tell you one example, which I am witness of. That in 2018, I was attending United Nations Human Rights Council session in Geneva, and somebody told me that a Khalistani rally is coming from Geneva station to United Nations. And I was waiting. And I saw that about 150 people are coming in the rally. There were hardly 10 to 12 Sikhs. Rest were Pakistanis, Punjabis. And many were from Belgium, and I have lived 20 years in Belgium, so one of them was my friend. And I said that, what are you doing in this rally? And he said, I got a call from Pakistan Embassy, Brussels, that we have to make it a success. So there is no doubt about it that Pakistan is behind this all Sikh activities. Now, Western governments are not taking serious actions, which I think Indian government should lobby for, that these people should be declared terrorists. And once they are declared terrorists, they cannot do activities in those countries.
Absolutely. Mr. Sareen, why is it that they are not declared terrorists? Why is it that the Western nations continue to give met out kid glove treatment to these extremist organizations?
Anusha, maybe, not declaring them terrorist, I can still understand, because there haven't been as many terrorist incidents in the West. But they can certainly be declared hate groups. And they have very strong laws against people who practice and preach hate. They can certainly crack down on some of these guys who are indulging in intimidation. And I agree with Mr. Sirsa. Many people, ordinary people who want to go about their lives, expecting them to stand up to these goons, it's not going to, it's difficult, right? But even when somebody comes out and speaks out against them, they are intimidated. You spoke about that Sikh gentleman and his wife, who had posted something on internet and the way they were intimidated. So isn't it the responsibility then of the local police, local authorities to crack down on the people who have been intimidating them, make an example of those fellows? And most of these fellows, these goons are cowards, right? Most of them are cowards.
Mr. Sareen, as we conclude, I want you to touch on one more point very briefly, and then I'll take in Mr. Sirsa also on that one. The Indian response has been proportionate. What's your understanding of the Indian response so far, largely speaking? Mr. Sareen.
Look, I think the Indian response has been so far, I think it's been a little namby-pamby. We've resorted to the normal diplomatic communications in terms of condemning it, in terms of summoning their ambassador. And I think now we need to take it to the next level. We need to start issuing serious warnings, perhaps close down consulates, and perhaps then in retaliation also close down their consulates out here. I know it's not, it doesn't sound very good, but I think until and unless you show that you are dead serious about what this is, and how seriously you take it, I don't think it's, so there is either you have to tell the West that either you are complicit, or you are incompetent, or you are utterly callous to our concerns.
Mr. Sirsa, can we do this? Can we do this straight talk to the West that Mr. Sareen is talking about?
So there are two different things. One, definitely the government has to take more strong steps. But yes, if you remember, the moment Indian government decided that it's tit for tat, and they removed the checkpost again outside the British High Commission. And I remember the Nationalist Sikhs went out to the embassy. In fact, they tried to enter the England embassy. That day itself, England was on their foots, and they more than 100 police persons were deployed outside the England embassy. And same comes with the Canadian High Commission. So one thing is for sure, that you have to tell them that it is not that if you will go soft on those people and we will let it go. No, we will take a concrete and constructive steps against you also. That message has to be given. And secondly, one very important thing which one of the panelists also mentioned, but not in the perspective. See, most of these people who are doing this kind of protest, they are seeking asylum in Canada or America. So in other ways, they actually want to show that yes, we are ones oppressed in India, and that's the reason
they're victims of some kind of human rights abuses.
They're victims, and they want to show
that is why I raised it in the very beginning. That human rights is being used as some kind of a subterfuge. We hope that this is taken up much more seriously by the Western governments.
Such humankind there in India which is need to
absolutely. There is no domestic sentiment on which the Khalistanis can really harp upon. That's all the time that I have. Mr. Manjinder Singh Sirsa, Mr. Sushant Sarif, and Mr. Arif Ajatia. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us on the broadcast.